This is the Friday Rugby Preview on Borders Rugby Radio with Stuart Cameron.
Hello and welcome to the Friday Rugby Preview. There's no local rugby tomorrow, but on today's programme we're going to look at the National 1 game which is happening this evening at 7:30 between Gala and Biggar, and we'll be previewing the Border League final which this year takes place at Netherdale between Melrose and Selkirk, plus a look at Scotland's final game of the Six Nations against Italy tomorrow and a chat with the new Director of Rugby at Gala, Ewen Swinton. Well, Dale Clancy is here as always, and let's start by reflecting on last weekend's big weekend in the Borders. We had Gala versus Melrose, Kelso versus Ayr in National 1, and of course Hawick won the Premiership playoff final, literally at the death against Curry. So first of all, many congratulations to Matty Douglas and his Hawick team, both on and off the pitch. They're now champions of Scotland for the first time in 21 years, and richly deserved.
Yeah, definitely. I think, we've kind of waxed lyrical for weeks and weeks and weeks about how good Hawick have been in the way that they've kind of conducted themselves throughout the season. They've won the games that have been really narrow. They've beaten teams in and around them in the league season. They've really put them at the sword. That victory against Curry is, one of two during the normal campaign are very notable. But in the end, they had to do it such a hard way. Obviously to go down to 14 men and then go down to 13 men and go behind, and to score that try. Sean Muir said it, and I probably find it hard to disagree with him. There's probably not another team in Scottish Club Rugby at the moment that would be able to come back and win that in the fashion that Hawick did. But in terms of not only will you be really chuffed at the fact that the team that finished top won the Premiership, but in terms of an advert for Scottish Club Rugby, it was excellent. It had a bit of everything. It had a bit of a family vibe there, which in probably years gone by it's been quite male dominated. But there was a lot of spectators. A lot of kids, a lot of wives, girlfriends, partners, grandparents and things. It was a really, really great spectacle for Scottish Club Rugby, and to go back down to the death, and you see all the all the highlights and all the footage and all the conversation about it as well on social media. It was probably the standout game at the weekend, even though we had Six Nations going on from a Scottish point of view.
And how did you feel seeing the clock go red, knowing that Hawick were down to 13 men, knowing that they had to go up and basically get a penalty right from the kickoff, which they did, and then Ronan McKean at the end with that great pass from Ethan Riley. But before all that, that was pretty much against the odds that they managed it. But had it been the other way, just for a moment, what an injustice.
It would have been. But then I think the decisions you've said it for the last few weeks as well, in terms of it just takes a red card, and it was almost just going to take a red card for that to happen. And
there was a red card.
Exactly. That's I was kind of thinking there, and part of me thought, I'm just never going to hear the end of this from Stuart. But when they scored and the kickoff went, I thought Hawick have to get this back. They never got it back initially, but managed to make a complete fight of it on the floor and got it back. It started to then develop, and even like Matty Carrier coming off the bench to hit the highest pressure line out that he's ever going to hit in his career. Bearing in mind, Fraser Rennick and Ross Graham were, hookers essentially in the last few games that have been before him. He's came on and he's hit that line out. Huge accuracy. They've maintained the ball. They never got isolated. They really protected the ball in close quarters, which they never did for 79 minutes before that. But there's one notable bit when you watch that play back, the pace Sean Fairbairn and Jay Linton hit that ruck, how quick they are to get that clearance away from Ryan Stewart from Curry. Gareth Welsh comes in and throws the ball at a lot of pace. That means Curry can't fold. Now, for a team that had a two-player advantage, it is absolutely criminal that Curry could not fill that space. But it was the pace and the momentum that Hawick were playing it, really physical up front, protecting the ball, Curry fighting for everything because they're trying to get everything at the death. But you look at that clear-out. The clear-out was textbook from those two players. The pace to get the ball away, and then Riley, who, maybe given another couple of minutes, it probably would have got man of the match from our side of things. But, it was a great pass out to McKean, who popped his shoulder in the act of scoring, but I don't think he'll do a better injury in his life. It was a great moment for Hawick, and I've said for years, when I played with the likes of Lee Armstrong and Neil McComb and Ali Weir, when we were kind of coming through age grade, I was always envious of Hawick, and that's exactly the reason why. The whole town got behind them, from clearing the snow to winning the game. The whole town kind of got behind them and rallied them through.
Now, two things then about this. It was a great match, no question about it. Great spectacle, I get that. That could also have been a cup final, effectively, which it was, but it could have been the cup final. It just happened to be a fantastic match, which was the playoff. But we have to now let the dust settle and say, look, this mustn't be allowed to happen again. We must crown the champions after 18, the same as we do in National 1, 2 and 3.
Yeah, I think that's a conversation for the leagues, and I think it's also the one thing I feel like we've perhaps not spoken about a lot, which I've not heard too much of an opinion about, is the players' side of things as well. And it's not just the players that were playing in that final, it's maybe the players that lost in the semi-final. Or if you're maybe asking Jed, for example, their season was pretty much done with 5 games to go. What's their preference as a player point of view? Because at the end of the day, they put on the spectacle, they're the entertainment. We're obviously the kind of consumers of that. So it's interesting to get their side of things. But I've obviously seen and spoken to you at length about the proposal for the Cup. I don't see any issues with it, to be fair. I think it would be good. I think the season needs structured and condensed so it suits everybody. And it's going to be the best way to grow the game, actually, because all these little bits of infight in the Border League and trying to fit sevens in and then trying SRU to get their stuff in, District Rugby and Super 6, there's a little bit too much infight, and that's almost a part of a solution to it all. It's not the solution, but it's certainly one of them, because you could still in time and in history have that game in a cup final effect, but to win the league, because the two teams might still be fighting out at the top, or, especially the coverage that you're producing for Scottish rugby, there's nothing to say that you couldn't cover 2 games and keep updated, throughout proceedings. So it's something that you've obviously really thrust into the public eye in terms of rugby fans in the last few weeks, and it is something that probably needs to be, really discussed at length at their level in terms of what the league want to do, how they want to go forward with it, but also consider what the players want.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is the players that are playing the game ultimately, and but I think it ticks the boxes, and certainly I can confirm that the president, the vice president, Gavin Scott, and a few other people at the SRU do have the proposal in black and white. At least they can now discuss it. If they decide to go for it, then great. If they don't, well, that's their choice, and the club's choice, and the players' choice, and we'll see what happens. But I think it really needs doing, because it will really put a rocket up the cup in particular, and also give the chance for all 50 teams to have a great opportunity to get to the National Stadium. And I know we've spoken many times that one of the big regrets of your career is never being able to play on the hallowed turf.
Yeah, Walkerburn. Yeah, it was something that passed me by. We got to the final at Murrayfield, and it was a Shield final against Peter Wright's Glasgow Hawks, and it was a great game. You were part of everything apart from the game itself. So it's something that was a bit of a regret of mine. I think going forward, if it's in black and white, it's such a brave thing for you to do in terms of bringing it to the public, because it's really difficult nowadays to have an opinion, put it out in the platforms that you do, and not feel a little bit fragile in terms of the feedback that you're going to get. After the final, a Hawick player did come out in the pitch, and I was congratulating Matty Carrier, and we were speaking, and it was a player who I taught at the college, and he'd had a few beers, but he did say, he goes, yeah, we need to sort this out. I think the league should be done by December, and we should do a cup. Now, obviously, in the club rooms, that's been a topic of conversation. So, with this conversation, that's the thing that drives it. But you look at what they do with the schools and the youths. It's this big crescendo, this big, well planned out cup competitions or league formats that end up being a big finals day. It works for schools, and I don't see why it shouldn't work for amateur rugby, because it truly is now amateur rugby. It gives us, the amateur players and us, the lovers of amateur rugby, an opportunity to get our teeth into 2 different platforms, support your team through the league season. If that falls flat, you've still got the excitement of a cup campaign to come. So I'm 99% behind you, Stuart.
I mean, certainly we agree that the cup is a bit broken, and the reason for that really is because everything's overlapping. The league is going to the cup is going to the league, and I've heard rumours that some clubs, certainly one club, might pull out of the quarter-final simply because they're fighting a league campaign, and that takes priority. The cup isn't a priority because they have other things on their mind. Now, this way, of course, you get the leagues done and dusted, and then you can concentrate on the cup. And I think the 2 things that we were talking about was, obviously, if you have the 5 divisions, so you have a Premiership Cup, a National 1 Cup, a National 2 Cup, etc., right the way down to National 4, all of a sudden a regional team, for instance, that's coming up to play National Rugby next season for the first time has a 1 in 5 chance of getting to Murrayfield. And I think that is a brilliant scenario, and it's something which they can focus on. If you're a team that is 3/4 of the way through the season, you haven't got very good results, you're not going to be champions, and so instead of the dead rubber, what you get is you've got to fight for the highest place in that league to get a good seeding in the Cup. And that solves that problem of the dead rubbers at the end, because if you're down the bottom of the table, number 10 goes down, number 9 will just about survive. You could obviously have a playoff against the team below that finished second. They've always worked well in the past, and I think that could be a January-February thing before the Cup. So that's a possibility, and I'd certainly fully support that. But I think this dead rubber is another thing which a lot of people talk about, like, for instance, tonight, which leads us on beautifully to the National 1 match between Gala against Biggar. Now, there's nothing really at stake. We know that the champions are going to be either Kelso or Ayr. Yes, there's a personal thing there from Gala. They want to get up above Melrose, who are in third position at the moment. There's 10 points between them, but Gala do have an extra game in hand, and who knows what could happen. So we'll talk about Gala against Biggar, which is happening tonight shortly, and we'll bring in the player coach for Gala, who is, of course, Craig Dodds.
Should be a good game. Biggar always bring a lot of physicality to us. I remember probably this time last year actually we ended up playing them on a Friday night in a critical game around the league sort of campaign for us, and we got beat. We went down a lot of tries early, managed to come back and get a couple of bonus points, but they can attack really well. They've got a big physical pack and they'll bring it to us. We'll be rejigging a few things this week, so after a good win against Melrose, but now a few guys going to Super 6 commitments, which is great PR for the club in terms of people coming through and then getting contracts off the back of it. So wish the boys all the best. They're heading to pastures new for the next few while, which means, like I say, that we're going to have to move a couple of things around the backs particularly, but no doubt that the guys coming in can put in a performance, and like I say, we'll be looking to get a win, continue a little bit of a winning run that we're on.
So they're obviously eyeing up Melrose in third place, who they beat. It was a big scoreline as well, something like 8 points between them. Gala in the 40s, Melrose in the 30s, so a very entertaining game obviously at Netherdale, and the way Gala's playing at the moment, they'll certainly fancy the chances of catching Melrose.
Yeah, definitely. They're turned a corner after their kind of sticky patch in the season, which, who'd have thought when we were at the Greenyards and Melrose cuffed Gala that we would be sitting in a position that in the next 2 games that they played, like Gala would have, scored so many points against them. Yes, in this fixture they conceded a little bit more, but, the feedback from what I'm hearing about the game is, the game was pretty much done, and Melrose did get a couple of tries to put a bit of gloss on that scoreline, although in the first half it was really competitive. So, that's the kind of feedback I've had. It was very one-sided. It was a Gala supporter that told me that, but I've still, it's the feedback I've got from the game that we were speaking about it midweek. So, Gala are now in the position that we've said week on week on week. They're building. They've got a really good nucleus of players. Like, I'm really impressed with some of the young, like Glendinnin's a really good young player. The performance against Kelso when they won at Pointer Park as well. A team who potentially are just one more step away from going to the Premiership. They've got players in there that can win against any team in this division. So there's a little bit of a focus on the games to come, but there's obviously, I think, that big focus on building this team, getting that culture right, getting the coaching squad right as well, because that's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen, in preparation for next year for another tilt, trying to go and get into the Premiership, because I don't think it's going to get any easier, especially if you've got one team going up, one team going down. You've got a whole host. You've still potentially got Ayr or Kelso in there, Melrose, Gala, bring in GHA as well, and the teams round about them, Biggar will certainly look to rebuild again. So it's a really, really difficult league, and I would expect next year will be much of the same in terms of how competitive it's been. But yeah, another game to start building the foundations for next season for Gala.
And as Craig said, there's a few boys away, Harris Rutherford and Murray Wilson, who are in the Southern Knights, and again, that's what it's all about, developing players for the future. Yeah,
and Fraser Wilson as well has been announced in the under-18 squad to play the Welsh team the weekend from Gala. So it's great to see these players, and Hector Patterson as well from Hawick. So great to see these young players from the borders getting these opportunities, and Harris Rutherford's a player that when I've watched on a few occasions, he does have the skill set to go up a level. I think he is a really talented player, and sometimes with the better players round about him, when you do make that step up, it sometimes makes you, it does put you in good stead and makes you stand out. So they need those steps up, and that's what club rugby is about, always been about, in my opinion. You can't hold on to these players for your own gain. You need to have an environment where you're developing players, allowing them that pathway to progress, because you could be giving them the pathway into a long career in professional rugby, but you also, if you've got that welcoming environment, they're more likely to come back as well. It's a community club. We do have other areas that people and players can go to. But in the end, it's a sense of community, and somebody else will come in and fill that shirt.
Little word about Biggar as well, because I still feel sorry for them, and a lot of people do as well. Just before COVID, they played all the games, they won all the matches, they got the trophy. It was almost in the cabinet, and it was snatched away from them. Bad taste in the mouth, I think. And of course, since then, they haven't been able to get back to, some would say, their rightful place in the Premiership at the time, based on that team.
Yeah, I don't think I'll get a birthday present from my dad if I say I feel sorry for Biggar. So, but yeah, there was a slight injustice with that with COVID. They then tried again and almost got in, and then they've obviously kind of stagnated slightly. Who knows what would have happened if they got into the Premiership? With the Premiership, you attract players. It's part and parcel of being in that kind of division. They would never got that opportunity. They did bring some players back. They were able to recruit. They've been able to maintain their squad as well, but it's just not worked out for them. In terms of over the last few years, bad luck, coming close the next again year, and then being one of the teams that fell away, and then finally this year just not able to get that consistency in their performance, and been unlucky with injury as well. They've had quite a team which is chopped and changed, week on week. So they've not had that continuity that a team like Kelso have perhaps had. They've had a team that's been pretty consistent, apart from one or two, throughout the season. So again, but Biggar, I know what Biggar are like as a club. They're an ambitious club. So I put them in the bracket of your Melroses and your Ayers and your Galas for next year, because they'll be wanting to kind of regroup and have another charge at it, because it's been a while. I know Peebles are similar because we kind of were like ships in the night, but Biggar it's been a while since they've been in the Premiership, and they'll be wanting to get back.
Well, I remember the last time Biggar came to Netherdale, and Craig mentioned it as well, they were 28-0 up after about 20-odd minutes. And, really, again, we just didn't expect that, because Gala were in the position of going for the title, and they look back on that one and say, well, that was where we lost it. Yeah,
definitely. I remember covering that game, and I was shocked after. It was almost a point a minute, and they raced it as such a huge lead. They did have the benefit of players like Josh King on that occasion, who's now playing for Boroughmuir Bears. So they had players who were probably a little step above as well, and they had a lot of there was difficult kicks as well in that game that just kind of takes the wind out of your sails. So when Gala were trying to get back into it, they just were starved of the ball, and Biggar, especially in the first few minutes, were amazing in that game. And there's almost that little bit of we're going to undo your title charge because ours got undone the year before. So there was a little bit of kind of retribution there from Biggar. But for both teams, they've had a bit of an indifferent season, quite similar in terms of the way that they've went about that one this year, and obviously the years before as well, in terms of just missing out on promotion.
Well, it was certainly a great game last time round, and of course Gala very nearly got back into it as well from the 28-0. It was very exciting, and I'm sure it'll be as exciting tonight. Andrew Fleming will be reporting on that one for us this evening at Netherdale, and look out for score updates on our Twitter service at Borders Scores. Well, on Monday, it's the Border League final between Melrose and Selkirk. They were the two teams which topped the pools this year. There was a National 1 pool made up of Gala, Melrose and Peebles and Kelso, while the Premiership pool comprised Hawick and Selkirk, and of course Jed Forest. And quirkily, the Borders teams that finished the highest in both divisions didn't make it into the final. You'll remember Selkirk and Hawick drew first day of the season, then Selkirk went on to beat Jed by a bigger margin than Hawick to book their place in the final, while in National 1 all Kelso games were played away from home, and of course they lost one of those to Melrose at the Greenyard. So let's hear from the coaches, Bert Grigg of Melrose and Selkirk boss Scott White.
I think this was obviously a timely break for us. Having been up at Curry a couple of weeks ago, picked up a few niggles, so it's given boys a great opportunity to rest up and look into some detail. And it's also given us an opportunity to see what Melrose are all about. So Melrose have played Highland and Gala over the last 2 weeks, so it's been great to go in and kind of see what they've got to offer and stuff, and do our wee bit self-diligence and our wee bit homework for Monday night. So we've pretty much got a full fit squad to pick from. So front row will be Luke Petty, Bruce Riddle, Zen, who will come back from international duty over the weekend as well, which has been great for him over the last few weeks playing for Poland. Middle row we've got James Head, Andrew Cochrane. The back row we've got Ross Nixon, Scott McLean and Andrew McComb at 8. 9 Jack Hamilton, 10 Craig Jackson, 11 Ethan McVicker, 12 Aaron McComb, 13 Ryan Cottrell, 14 Josh Welsh, and Finlay Whelans will be at fullback. It's great as well. We've agreed with Melrose that there'll be a squad of 23, so it gives an opportunity for a wider squad to be involved in a final, something that we've not been involved in a few years at Selkirk. So boys are excited. They're really looking forward to it, and now it's up to them to deliver the result that a lot of them deserve in terms of the amount of hard work they put in through the season.
Yeah, so obviously excited. Border League final, good opportunity for us to get some silverware. A bit different it being on a Monday night, I know, but realistically it's a good fit for both clubs in terms of the way that the league seasons go and the way that domestic rugby is. The 10-team leagues next year in both leagues, so hopefully make this a bit easier next year to fit everything in, which would be good to see. But look, expecting still a decent crowd and a bit of interest. There's not an awful lot else going on a Monday night, so expecting there to be a bit of interest from both sides and around the borders itself. But look, all the boys are really excited. It's cup final rugby. Some of the guys have been there before. Some guys, this will be their first experience of it. Taking a sort of a larger squad of 23, both teams, which has been agreed. And look, I think that's a great opportunity for players to be involved in such an occasion, such a rich history of a competition. It's going to be great for everyone. Coaches, management included in that as well. Last time we played Selkirk in the Border League last year, it was the probably scoreline flattered us a little bit. Selkirk brought a lot of changes across, just with them still competing into the Premiership. And we're under no illusions it's going to be a different task this year in this game. They've got added a bit of experience to their squad and have certainly been playing a sort of more exciting brand of rugby this year and have done well in the Premiership, to say the least. But look, for us as a squad, it's really exciting. Obviously, promotion hasn't happened for us. But these next two games, we play Selkirk and then Curry, both Premiership opposition, and it's a real opportunity for our guys to take a bit of stock and see where we are in comparison to Premiership sides. And I think it's a good opportunity for us to really, really test ourselves in a different environment. But look, just really excited for the players, for the other coaches and management, myself. Just really excited to be involved in a Border League final and looking forward to the game on the Monday evening at Gala.
Both coaches standing down at the end of the season to move on to bigger things, and both with a chance of silverware on Monday night and of course in the Scottish Cup too. But a Monday night at Netherdale will be something different and a big crowd expected, as it always is for the Border League final. You heard them both, 23-man squads.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing from this is what you said before we heard from the coaches in terms of, the format of the pools. It's not really the highest team. Like Hawick have been head and shoulders above every club in the country, but they're not in the Border League final. So, the results that have went away in their group, that draw against Selkirk has been the thing that's got Selkirk into the final, which is great. And I think we were having this discussion before, because the Border League is something that it's almost like the Scottish Rugby Cup as well. It's something that's just not really found its right place in a modern day kind of rugby calendar. And I feel these dual fixtures, which we spoke about with Jim Harold when we were at Selkirk last year, that was my vision. That's what I kind of thought about how to do it. You would have a Premiership or a national pools, you doubled your fixtures, so you would just accumulate points, and you could end up seeing your different teams in the final. It's a format of that, and it's great to see Selkirk and Melrose in the Border League final. So it's going to be a great game. I think both teams like to play rugby. They like to spread the ball, especially Melrose. Melrose do like to play quick rugby and then spread the pitch. Selkirk do have probably a little bit more in terms of ball carrying, and setting up platforms and trying to really weaken teams in the forward. So it's going to be an interesting battle. But to say that, so do Melrose. Melrose have got a lot of really good ball carriers. Selkirk have some tremendous backs. So it's almost two teams that are similar but different. So it's going to be an interesting fixture, and especially at Netherdale, because it's a nice big pitch. And hopefully we get a big crowd there on a Monday night for some rugby.
It's almost a home match for Melrose, isn't it? They played at Netherdale last week and they're going to be playing on Monday.
Yeah, I think that's where they originally stole the post from, was it not? So they.
Well, we're going back in history now.
Yeah, history lesson. So yeah, it's going to be a good final. It's good that it's not on somebody's pitch. I think in terms of one of the teams, I think to grow the Border League again, people need to be excited about the product and the rugby. And nowadays, that level of rugby, like if you 10, 12 years ago, if you'd played a National 1 team against a mid-table Premiership team, it's not an attractive proposition, but I think the brand of rugby and what both teams bring to it makes it really, really attractive. There's going to be really good rugby on display, hopefully if the weather's dryish, but we've seen Melrose have a great game against Peebles in torrential conditions, so it's hopefully we start to see different coloured clubs' hats coming to watch a Border League final, so that we can as a community and as a kind of a border region we can back our own competition, because if we don't back it, there's a chance that at some point in the future it might just fall by the wayside if we can't find a place for it.
And hopefully with the 10-team leagues next season, things will be an awful lot better, and they might decide that the pool system, we won't actually need to do the double headers, because there will be time to fit it in. Only this year, obviously, the Gala Peebles game, which was due to go ahead and then it was iced off, won't be played now, for obvious reasons, because we're already at the final, and it was a dead rubber. But also, I'd imagine the fact that it's at Netherdale will delight Selkirk. They don't like playing at Philiphaugh.
Yeah, I know. They'll. I think you could have taken it as far away as possible. You could play it in Orkney, and I think they'd have been happy. But yeah, in terms of their home form in the league this season, it's not been great for them. But to be in a position where you can add to your tally of border leagues is great. For these players who are now starting to kind of think about sevens and the sevens campaign, which is coming up, I think it's just worked out seamlessly almost for the Border League. I don't think people, if you think about it, Gala versus Peebles, I think it was meant to be played round about New Year and Christmas time, and then it obviously got kind of frosted off. Nobody really probably wanted to see that too much, but when it, and especially that it's been cancelled, it doesn't matter, because we've got to the position we're in without the contribution of those two teams for their fixtures. So, we've got a good final on display, and I'm sure it'll be a great occasion. And as I say, I hope there's a lot of spectators down there on a Monday night. Fill the stand, get down there, and it's going to be, obviously, it's a working day the next day, so we can't go too wild, but I'm sure there'll be a few people down to cheer on both those sides.
Well, Melrose looking for their 21st Border League title, Selkirk their 7th, Melrose last one in 2018-19 season. Selkirk even further back, 2009-10, when they won 3 titles in 3 seasons after a very long wait. I think it was 1952-53 before that, and I remember seeing Basher Ingalls at the 2008 game. He was so proud. He was obviously in the 1953 squad that last won it, and then he saw them do 3 titles in a row. A great occasion at Poynter Park that time in 2008. That was Neil Darling, skipper then, and I remember interviewing him. The lights were out and it was as dark as anything. We couldn't see him, but underneath that, he was absolutely delighted. Should be a great event. We're live from Netherdale from 7 o'clock, a pre-match build-up with you, and Robin Purdy, of course, yourself, and Graham Dodds in the commentary box on Borders Rugby Radio. Also TV highlights the next day, and we must at this point wish our lovely Barbara Shield, who presents our television shows, a speedy recovery. She broke her leg at the weekend. She'll be out of action for a while, so get well soon, Babs, and hopefully you'll be back with us for the Kings of the Sevens. And talking of the Kings of the Sevens, the Melrose draw has been made, so let's have a little look at that. There's a preliminary round as usual, and that's Boroughmuir against Kelso, Inbrackies v Jed Forest, Gala against Watsonians, the Stunts against Ayr, Peebles against Stirling, Heriots against Hawick, GHA against Selkirk, Mar against Curry. That's a preliminary round. One name stands out there, the Stunts. What can you tell us about them?
I can tell you that it's a 6-letter word. Obviously, there's been a lot of invitational teams at the Sevens this year. You can see the Wild Dogs in the first round. There's still a lot of traditional teams there. It's a slightly different slant, in terms of the teams that are there. But you sometimes do need to change with the times. Obviously, there was big plans about involving Super 6 players and the Super 6 teams and what have you. But you've got invitational teams that brought a lot last year, like the Army. They were great at Melrose Sevens last year. Samurai as well. Melrose have obviously obviously got into the first round as well. But London Scottish, it was only a few years ago that they won. Players like Lewis Berg were playing for them as well. Players that have went on to be mainstays in the Scottish game at a different level. So it's certainly there's some teams in there they'll throw up a few surprises, and a lot of the traditional teams in there as well, which is great to see.
The Co-Optimists have withdrawn. Now the reason for that again is because the Super Series that we've got to remember to call it now rather than Super 6. I think there'll be a 7 and probably an 8 and a 9. Who knows what else is going to happen in the future there? But it's Super Series now. They're covering every angle, and of course it's starting controversially on the same day as the Melrose Sevens, which means Southern Knights are playing Watsonians. So a lot of players are going there rather than playing for the Co-Optimists, and that's obviously caused them issues, and London Scottish are in for them. So the first round will be Melrose, who take on Boroughmuir or Kelso. Obviously, as hosts, Melrose always go into round 1. Speranza 22, who were at the Edinburgh Sevens, a useful outfit, one of these guest sides again. They will play the winner of Edinburgh Accies and Jed Forest. London Scottish will play either Gala or Watsonians. Monaco, they're here for, I think, the first time, and they'll play the winner of the Stunts versus Ayr game. Samurai are back. They'll play Peebles or Stirling County. Lions Rugby Sevens, another team who were at the Edinburgh Sevens, very good players. They will play the winners of Heriots and Hawick. The British Army, defending their title, they take on either GHA or Selkirk. And the Wild Dogs, they're not from Africa, are they, this team? I don't think so. But Wild Dogs, they will play the winner of Mar and Curry, which will be a great tie in the preliminary round, I have to say. So that is the lineup. And, of course, like last year, we will be live from 10:30 in the morning till 8 o'clock at night. That's some shift, 9.5 hours, non-stop. Looking forward to that.
Yeah, I love the Melrose Sevens. I love playing in it. I think I'm really, really fortunate that I'm able to still attend and participate in a way that's actually, I'm able to stay in the tournament for a little bit longer than I was as a Peebles player. So, it's really fortunate I'm able to be involved in part of the tournament, because it is great. It's great whatever way that you're involved in the Sevens, not just Melrose, but it's obviously the flagship tournament for Scottish rugby. It was where Sevens was invented. If you're a spectator, it's great to be there. If you're a player, the atmosphere is brilliant. Especially in the kind of latter rounds, so I've been told. And then, and as part of the commentary team and part of your team, Stuart, it's brilliant to be part of. Like, it's such an occasion, such a buzz, and it's a long day, but it just absolutely flies by. So, and
it's the original, isn't it? It's Melrose Sevens, which is fantastic. Whichever way you look at it, obviously the change with the 3G pitch now, the floodlights and all the rest of it, it's still the Melrose Sevens and always will be. And we always hark back to 1883 when Ned Haig decided to produce this tournament. Fantastic stuff. And of course, this year, something different, which we're really looking forward to, and that's the Good Friday event, which is happening. There's a semi-junior tournament, which was going to be the Hawick one, but they've agreed to switch it to Melrose. That's going to be great. There's obviously a women's tournament on the Saturday, but on the Friday, you've got 16 teams, including the likes of Berwick and Langham and Duns and a few other local ones. I think Preston Lodge are coming and a few others. That will be announced shortly, and we'll be looking forward to bringing that live as well. So a real 2-day event for us, and television highlights from us on Borders Rugby Television of the Friday event.
Yeah, I think it's great. It's great what you do for local rugby, and then obviously all the teams in and about. Like you mentioned teams like Preston Lodge, getting coverage that nobody else is doing. So obviously Melrose Sevens, it kind of has to, and it has before COVID, has before the Super Series and Super 6. It has to move with the times, and that's a way of doing it. They did have the Vets tournaments, they've had all these initiatives before, but it's going to change in its shapes over the next few years. And I just think that the punters will always go back to Melrose Sevens. It is the place that Sevens was born. A lot of players who played all over the world and played rugby for their national teams, and on the Sevens circuit, they all want to play. They all want to come out that narrow tunnel at the Green Yards and run out at the pitch in front of 10,000 people and play in Melrose.
And hopefully with the right numbers on.
Yeah, it's always a bugbear. We'll have to make sure that the Wild Dogs have the right name tag on. But that aside, it's a great occasion. And I think with the 3G pitch as well, it just makes it, the kind of the world's their oyster at Melrose to make it as big and as bold as they want.
Looking forward to that. Well, obviously no local rugby tomorrow because it's Super Saturday in the Six Nations. We play Italy at 12:30 7:30 without the injured Stuart Hogg and the injured Finn Russell. So a chance of ending the campaign in third place. And without Hogg, without Russell, what sort of Scotland's going to turn out? How much difference is it going to make without them, particularly Finn Russell?
Finn Russell is a huge blow. He's been playing rugby, which is, I think, against Ireland, he was, I read in the reports about his injury and I felt he was a little bit flatter than he has been in the beginning of the campaign. I think that changes the whole dynamic of the team. Obviously, with the team announcement, I would have liked to have seen Kinghorn at fullback.
I was quite surprised that Ollie Smith is the Glasgow Warriors at the fullback.
But he's brilliant. Ollie Smith is a really good player, but I just think that over recent weeks, I've felt that Kinghorn deserved a little bit more. I think he could do a little bit more for us in the last 35 minutes or so of a game, 30 minutes of a game. Hogg brings a lot. Experience, composure, skill set as well. He's still a class act. He's still a really, really good player. But I feel that there was probably an opportunity to use Kinghorn a little bit more. But the fact that he's been popped back into 10, we do have other options there. If he's on the park at fullback, he can still act as that first receiver depending on how Scotland's set up. So, he's going to be our fly half, but obviously there'd be a debut for Ben Healy off the bench.
We spoke about this before, about having borderers in the team, and it goes all the way back to about 5 or 6 years ago when Stuart Hogg was in the team and got injured in the warm-up and therefore played no part in that particular match. And that was the first time for ages that there was no border in the side, because obviously we've had Ross Ford, Chris Patterson, Hoggy, Lee Jones, all these sort of people from the borders in the past. And we were a bit worried when Stuart Hogg obviously wasn't going to make today, but lo and behold, back in after his broken rib, it's Rory Sutherland representing Hawick, and of course Cameron Redpath, although he's born in France, he is the son of Brian Redpath.
Yeah, and he represented England, so yes. It just shows you what international rugby means to people. But yeah, great to see Suz back in there. He's been obviously got a few games for Ulster under his belt as well, so I think he's perhaps one of those players that we were missing on Sunday. That they brought the replacements on for the front row, and there's after that there was a little bit of our the dominance up front with facing three props in the front row didn't help, but there was that little bit of soft underbelly that we had in the front row. That's what Rory Sutherland certainly brings. So great to see him back. Hopefully he gets a good run of games now. I'd like to see him, get a good run of games and start to consolidate his place heading into the World Cup. But the squad as a whole, some interesting decisions, some good decisions, some movement in terms of players. But yeah, it's good to see another borderer squeezed in there.
Fantastic. Well, let's have a look at that team then. Ollie Smith at fullback, Kyle Steen 14, Hugh Jones 13 and Tuipulotu 12. You'll notice they're all Glasgow Warriors. 11, Duan van der Merthe from Edinburgh, Blair Kinghorn at 10 from Edinburgh, Ben White, London Irish at 9. The front row is Pierre Schoeman, George Turner and Xander Fagerson. Sam Skinner and Johnny Gray in the second row. Sam coming in for the injured Richie Gray. Jamie Ritchie captaining out of number 6. Hamish Watson starts at 7. Jack Dempsey, the number 8 position. Replacements: Ewan Ashman, Rory Sutherland, W.P. Nell, Scott Cummings, Matt Fagerson, Ali Price, Ben Healy. Winning his first cap if he gets on the pitch from Munster, of course. Cameron Redpath is on there as well. A lot of people flagging up Ewan Ashman as one of their favourites.
Yeah, I think it's good to see him back in the squad. He's obviously had a few caps. It's been a position which has been dominated over recent years by Brown and McInally, and then before that it was completely dominated by Ford, and that was the kind of transition period when Brown and McInally came in and kind of made the jersey their own. And I think Turner has been, he's certainly nailed on that position, and Brown and McInally have suffered with injuries as well in a bit of indifferent form over the last few years, so Turner's grasped his opportunity and he's done really, really well for the team. But Ashman's a player that is exciting. He's obviously playing some good rugby down at Sale Sharks as well, so it'd be good to see just a little bit more competition for that place, because we want to be seeing 2 or 3 players competing for the one position, and that's probably an area recently that the front row, I would say, is an area recently is probably our weakest, so it's good to see Ashman come in there.
On paper, we should win this game by say 12, 20 points, maybe. Italy, no mugs though, as we've seen, although Wales did very well against them last week in Rome. I thought Italy would actually get the win, so they seem to have taken a backward step. Let's hope that step goes even further.
Yeah, they started the campaign well against France and ran them close, but after that they've been pretty poor.
Ireland wasn't too bad though.
Yeah, but they've been playing some good rugby. It's sometimes quite risk and reward. Like they have been trying hard, and obviously Capuzzo, the fullback, probably pronounced his name wrong, but
good effort though.
Yeah, thanks. He's Italian. We never got to People's High School, but at fullback he's out of the squad, so he's a really dangerous player and helps them get in behind defensive lines, which fragments teams, which allows that second opportunity to go in for an attack. But when you're losing personnel like that, it's not doing your team any good. But Italy now are a little bit different. It's not like they're reliant on Parisi or Bergamasco or these players or Dominguez, who used to kick us, to defeat when they first came into the Six Nations. They've got players throughout their squad that are playing at a really top level. The worrying thing is underneath that as well, which you could probably do hours on, is the fact that even underneath that at their age grade rugby is starting to really, pay dividends in terms of the players that they're bringing through. And I think that's an example of the squad that they've got now at Italy is, it's pretty strong.
And since Italy came in to form the Six Nations way back in 2000, they've only been favourites to win a game once, and that was against Scotland at home. And that was the one that Duncan Weir kicked the last second drop goal to win 30-29. The only time they've been favourites. I don't think they'll be favourites on this one. No,
I don't think so. I think Scotland, they have too much in that squad. And even on the bench, players like the Price with his experience. Redpath, Hugh Jones has been playing great, and Tui Pilotu has been playing great. The centres, and they formed a really good partnership. But Cam Redpath does bring you something different. I think he's a class act. To come off the bench, we've got strength and depth everywhere except the front row. I've been saying, so even this, you look, Matt Fagerson's been one of the best ball carriers in the Six Nations, and he's got a place on the bench because Dempsey, I thought, played quite well against Ireland. It obviously gives Watson a chance to get some international rugby under his belt before the World Cup as well. And certainly they've reshuffled and reshaped, but not massively, but giving players some game time ahead of the World Cup.
Well, finally tonight, a chat with the new Director of Rugby at Gala Rugby Club, Ewen Swinton, who I met up with during the week. It's been some week for him as well, because he was also announced as one of the management team for the South for their two matches, May the 9th, I think it is, at Netherdale, when the South take on Edinburgh in the inter-district contest over 2 weeks. Well, Ewan, first of all, congratulations on your not one position, but there's actually two positions, isn't it? You've come in as Director of Rugby at Gala, and you're also involved heavily with the South. Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, the South came to me a few weeks ago. It was something that I wasn't expecting, I wasn't looking for, but I was delighted when I was asked. It's a huge honour, huge responsibility. I'm acutely aware of the history and tradition that lies behind the South, and I certainly grew up going to South games at Kelso and loving them and loving the atmosphere. And I'm very much hoping that together with Matty and the team, we can honour these traditions and bring a successful operation to the borders and see a victorious outcome for the team at the end of the competition. So delighted to be involved in that. Very, very honoured to be asked, and hugely respectful of the tradition that's behind it, and highly ambitious to do well with it.
And it is really a very good team. Obviously, there will be on the pitch as well. We'll come to that in a minute. But off the pitch, people like yourself, Gary Muir involved, Matty Douglas, and all the clubs involved, which is the right thing, isn't it? I mean, the South was always about inclusion, all the clubs.
Well, I think that is fantastic. And in the management team, every single club, or all the senior clubs in the top two leagues that are involved, have a representative. That's going to be really important when it comes to selection, I think, to make sure that everybody knows that they've had a fair shot, and we'll be particularly careful about that. Matty is all over that in terms of his own mind just now. He's exceptionally keen to do well. He's very focused on working hard, and really now that Hawick have the championship out of the way, what a fantastic result that was. Now that they've got that out of the way, very keen to move on, get things organised, get a team selected, start to have some squad sessions and make real progress. And I think it's very important for the South and for the buy-in that we're looking for, or what I don't think we have to request it. We want to naturally enthuse people to be involved involved, and I think the fact that the various clubs within the region are all represented, every single one of the ones which are likely to be involved, I think that's really important. And it's certainly highly desirable in terms of making sure that we get the right mix of players set up as quickly as possible.
It's a slight difference to last time, isn't it? Because the East Lothian are involved, which means Musselburgh come into play, and presumably Lasswade and a few other clubs as well. But it is going to be called the South.
It will be known as the South. We're playing as the South. This is the return of the South. That we will be bolstered by representation from East Lothian, and they, I guess you could say, they live and exist south of Edinburgh. So in a manner of speaking, they're in the south of Scotland. But it is the South, and the East Lothian clubs are totally relaxed about that angle, I'm told, and I choose to believe that.
We're into 2023 now, so 23 years have gone. We've only seen 4 15s games, Barbarians, Northumberland early on, and a couple against Caledonia, home and away, one at Bridgehoch and one at Riverside Park. Bruce McNeil, actually, the only player that played in all 4 of them. And I suppose he's eyeing up a 5th as well, which will be good. But talking about the actual Inter-District Championship, everybody wants it in the South, no doubt about that. There was this thing about, is this the right time for it to happen, May and June? And it was kind of like a fait accompli, I suppose, from the SRU. It's like, yes, you want it back, prove it, but here are the dates, which, were a bit difficult because obviously the sevens. But in the future, hopefully, it's going to be like a January, February, isn't it? Sure.
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right. This was something that was pretty much a fait accompli when it came to the South. And the dates are not ideal, but there's no point in us dwelling on that. I think that we need to be positive, embrace it really strongly. You're quite right, it will move to different dates going forward. We will do our absolute best with this arrangement that's in place, and then in the future it will hopefully move to a time that's more conducive to the fixture list, and also I guess to player fitness as well, because it's quite a challenge to think that the guys are going to be able to keep themselves fit for 2 months after particularly the Premiership finishes. So yeah, it will change in terms of its shape, I'm quite sure. I think that the 4 districts want to deliver a successful championship. We want to make it interesting for spectators. We'd love to see good numbers turn up. I very much hope that people will come out and support us. We can't demand that in any sense at all, but what we can do is we can promise, all of our effort, the really, really hard work from the coaches and the team to provide the best possible outcome for the South, and it would be fantastic if people do feel that they're able to come out and support us. A Tuesday night for the first game, I don't think that's impossible for people. There's not a huge amount of competition for it, but long term, into the season, more into the regular season, and that's going to lead up to club internationals as well, so it gives a fantastic platform for players who are maybe just below the semi-pro level to show what they can do, and probably, or possibly certainly, progress in their careers, or indeed reach the top point that maybe is appropriate for certain players as well. So lots for players to look forward to. It is what it is for this year. We'll embrace it, we'll do our best with it, but we know that the likelihood is that in terms of being player and club friendly, it will improve, so we've got to be confident about that.
Well, I think there's certainly an appetite for it, and of course there's always been issues with when Border Reivers were here. The Borderers didn't feel really that it was their team, it was run by SRU. Similarly with the Southern Knights, I suppose people would argue about it's a Melrose team, and no matter how much they want it to be a Borders team, there's always this in the back of people's minds. The other thing I think as well, which is really important, is getting the venue right so that it can be taken round the grounds, and all of a sudden the South becomes a South team. And that's what's been missing.
That was an early thought when this appeared on my radar, was that I was given it as a fait accompli that we were going to be playing at Netherdale, which I think is absolutely fine. The South have played some fantastic opponents at Netherdale. The day my daughter was born, they were playing the All Blacks, so that's not that long ago. I was very conscious of the situation regarding the wish for others to see the South play on their ground, but the bottom line is that in this first game we are playing at the TD1 postcode, but it is the South. It's the southern soil. It is the Borders. We are at home, and I think that it would be fantastic if people can accept that this is not a home game for Gala. This is a home game for the South that just happens to be played in Gala. Yes, it would be fantastic to be playing around the other grounds. I well remember from my youth the fantastic atmosphere that used to exist at Poinder Park when the South were playing the other districts and the steam was rising out the forwards pack. back as they went down to scrum. These were fantastic atmospheric days. It would be wonderful to get the best version of that back that we possibly can.
And I think this link to pro rugby or semi-pro rugby as well is really important, because in the past it was kind of like, is it Southern Knights or is it going to be the South? It's one or the other.
Yeah.
But now we've kind of got a stepping stone in between Southern Knights and the club. And there's a lot of club players who want to play for their district as their peak thing. They've got no interest in going pro. They just want to play club rugby with their mates, etc. But at the highest level they can possibly be. And this gives that opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. There are players whose ambitions don't lie beyond that. I think that it is a high ambition to have. It's a step up from club rugby. I know that, I don't know, but I'm fairly sure that Alan Tate will be watching it in terms of his desire to fill the Southern Knights team from the border clubs, which I think is laudable, and it gives the guys something to aim at. It's we have in this region lots of people who, for very good reasons, won't want to go any further than the clubs. The clubs are their recreation, it's their sport, it's the level they want to play at. We, for instance, have farmers whose first priority is always going to be the harvest or the lambing season, or getting the various stock through to fruition. They will have their priorities, and these priorities are to be respected. This will be the top level that they will be aiming for. And I'm quite excited about one or two of the players who are going to come through at that level. We've got certainly one or two in Gala, one in particular who is a fantastic player, but this will be as far as he is possibly aiming.
Are you going to name him?
No. I don't think that would be very politically acceptable.
Well, we always try as a journalist, don't we? Get stuff out of you.
Absolutely.
Now, big question for me. Red and white stripes.
Yes.
Fantastic. That's great. What about socks? That's always interesting, because I noticed we've seen them play in red and white socks. We've also seen them play, like the Barbarians, with the club socks.
I think there's a discussion to be had there, because in my mind the tradition is the Red Sox, so the complete strip, and it looks very smart. And I think that how you look on a pitch does matter. It always did to me as a player. I'm told that it has always been that we play in club socks, Barbarian style, and certainly the recent times that's been the way it is. So as things stand, it will definitely be club socks, but I still think that there's a discussion to be had there. I'm a fan of certain aspects of tradition, and we'll see how many other fans there are of that as we progress things through.
Well, we certainly look forward to that. So that's the South coming up in May. We're all very excited about that. Yeah. But let's change now, because you have been announced today as the Director of Rugby of Gala. Yeah. And there's a lot of people who do know you, but there's quite a few that don't. So give us a little bit of a background on who is Ewen Swinton.
Well, I was very humbled when I was asked to be the Director of Rugby at Gala. I simply am what I am. I'm a Borders man, born and bred. As I said to you earlier, I appeared at Kelso Cottage Hospital directly after John Jeffrey. So I'm not a son of the soil, but I'm certainly a son of Kelso. I was brought up in Kelso, lived there for 20 years, married Morag, and moved to Gala in 1987. And since then, I've been living in Gala. I was a bank manager with the Royal Bank up to the point that I left there. Had a very happy spell as bursar at St Mary's School in Melrose. Did a couple of things after that, and then spent 7 years, very fulfilled years, as the bursar of Austin Friars in Carlisle, which is the only Augustinian school in Britain. It's a very interesting place if you're interested. And I have two kids, Greg and Katrina. Katrina is approaching 30. She won't thank me for saying that. Greg is just over, and we have a West Highland Terrier, Maisie, who keeps me very busy. That's the synopsis. If there's anything else,
fantastic. Well, what about the rugby side? Because you've obviously been involved with Gala youngsters.
Yep. I did the standard border thing as a kid. I played at school. I played for Kelso Harlequins, and I played the junior 15s at Kelso for the most part. Since I came up to Gala, after my kids were born, I wasn't involved in the few years that Greg was a toddler. But when he reached 7, I started to work with the minis in Gala and worked my way through. Had a fair bit of involvement with the school when the teachers were a wee bit reluctant at a period of time. I worked with Ian Miller, who's fairly well known to a lot of people, and we were fortunate to have a couple of crops of lads who we took to Murrayfield for Scottish Schools Cup finals, which were great experiences, particularly for ourselves in the second game, as we both had sons playing. I was involved with Gala Red Triangle for a period of time, and stayed on beyond Greg's playing career career. Then I had a lull again, where I was always interested, always around, but not actively involved. And then a couple of years ago, I started to become involved. Time became available after I retired in 2019. I started becoming involved in Gala, and Bill Noble asked me if I would take on the second team at Gala, which I was happy to do, and it's just progressed rather quickly to this point.
So when did you actually know that you were going to be involved as Director of Rugby?
It was about 2 weeks ago.
Right.
I got.
How did it come about?
I was trapped in an office and the door was locked, basically.
The usual Galloway.
No, it was two guys who I've got an awful lot of time for, Gary Isaac and Sinclair Patterson. We were chatting at one point, and they brought it up. It wasn't something that was on my radar particularly. I'm not full of my own importance at all. I didn't think of myself as the natural choice, but they sold it to me very positively. They were very kind in what they said. I'm going to leave that at that. So I was happy to accept, and I see it as a huge responsibility to a great club to do the very best that we can to ensure that the structure's there to get the best out of youngsters as they come through, and to fill the Gala team with Gala boys, much as Hawick have done in recent times to fantastic effect, to provide the right platform for guys to come through, to make the club appealing for all age groups, for spectators, to fill the clubhouse, to work with these guys to do everything I can to give the best possible outcome and results for Gala and Gala Rugby. The whole town, really, Stuart.
And of course, Gala, the sleeping giant that
Absolutely.
George Graham used to call it. And the last couple of seasons, some fantastic highs and a couple of lows as well.
Yeah.
This season, obviously, you were going really, really well. Then there's just 3 matches. It was bang, bang, bang. And then the wheels kind of came off. But even then, after that, there's been some great rugby played. I mean, against Melrose in particular at the Waverley Cup, and also at the weekend. Big score against your local rivals. There seems to be an enthusiasm back on the park, doesn't there?
There is. It's something that's come with Stevie Scott. I have nothing to say against who went before. They were great servants to the club, did lots of good things. Stevie changed it a little bit. He brought a huge level of enthusiasm, maybe a toughened edge to the way that the training is done. It happens at great pace. The guys, I think, are a wee bit fitter. There was a response to the change, and they're playing. The first 15 are playing some fantastic rugby, scoring great tries. It's really good to watch. It's really fun to watch some of the tries that are being run in. The forwards have been revitalised. We struggled a little bit when injuries bit in, and some guys played during the lean spell who were really putting their bodies on the line for the club at a time that they weren't necessarily in the right position to do so. So credit to the loyalty that they showed. But we've got lots of talent at Gala. We need more numbers.
Yeah, I was particularly impressed with people like Tamasitis, obviously, until he got injured. Fantastic commitment to the club. Ben Gill, Pate, who's been doing really well. There's a lot of great youngsters coming through. Obviously, your fly half, Harrison. Is it Harrison?
Harris Rutherford.
Harris Rutherford, that's right.
Yeah,
yes,
he's a lovely player. He's been instrumental in a lot of the good scores that we've put together. Marius is a big lad and a huge character and a lovely fella to have around. He's a fantastic clubman and hugely effective on the pitch. He's just coming back to fitness now. Ben as well. We've got Callum is one of the bravest tacklers you'll ever see in your life. He's just the sort of guy who you would have had beside you in the trenches in the First World War. When the whistle went, he'd have been up beside you. That sort of guy. So we've got lots of talent, and a lot of it is young, which gives us great scope for the future. We're not going to be losing players to age. We have to work to keep them for the right reasons. But the guys you mentioned are fantastic, and we've got others who are changing their remit within the club. Some are changing positions. Tim McCavan, who scored 2 tries on Saturday, was playing in the centre until mid-season. Now finds himself in the back row to great effect. He's also going to be my son-in-law next year, so I'm delighted to see that coming about for Tim. But no, we've got fantastic potential. you're right about the sleeping giant thing, and the numbers is something that's going to receive our attention. We can't wave a magic wand and suddenly make them better, but what we can do is do our absolute best to make sure that the whole experience is enjoyable, and that guys want to come and commit to the club, to be there training, to give us the right sort of grounding to have a fantastically successful future, build towards getting back up into the top league where Gala belong, and be able to do that in a manner that we can maintain it rather than getting into any kind of bounce scenario, which I think everyone who goes up fears a wee bit. So lots to look forward to, Stuart.
And at the moment it's Craig Dodds and it's Ewen Dodds who are doing a fantastic job. There's no doubt about that. Great players still, lots of commitment, and obviously looking towards their coaching careers as well in the future. What will happen next season in terms of the setup? Is that something that's going to be sort of announced later on, or?
It's not sitting unannounced, Stuart. It's a work in progress. Craig and Ewan have done a fantastic job. Ewan is just the most enthusiastic character. He speaks so well, and Craig, obviously, with his involvement with the SIU as kicking coach, and he's learning a lot about that line of things. So I think that we can look around ourselves and see who's doing well, who's having fun with the rugby, who's been successful. And you look at Hawick, obviously, and you look at Kelso, and you see a lot of local involvement. So I'm not speaking out of turn because we simply haven't got the coaching team in place yet. But there's a lot to be said for local involvement, and I think that the sleeping giant thing is a really relevant point because we have such history here. We have so many people who understand and know the game, and I think that there are others to come, not quite out of the woodwork, but back into the body of the Kirk and get involved and give their experience back to the game. So we would like to have a team of coaches who can help each other. We are an amateur side. We strive to be amongst the top amateur sides in the country. But at the same time, you've got to recognise that, for instance, Ewen Dodds is involved in shift work, so it's difficult at times for him to make training. So we would like to have a setup whereby there is backup and it's always there, and that the players always feel supported when they are coming down to training, and that they're having a good experience there, and that then helps to build the strength of the club. But I would say our ambition would be to find somebody, the right person to lead that, whoever that might be, fairly quickly. Certainly having active attention, and have a good squad of guys to support him and make the whole experience as enjoyable for everybody as it possibly can be.
There's still, of course, plenty of action to go this season, and a big game coming up very shortly, Gala against Ayr, and of course you can help your old club, Kelso, with beating Ayr there.
Well, the way that the guys are playing just now, I mean, they haven't always played their best, but they're still winning, and I think that's a fantastic thing when you're off the ball and still picking up bonus point wins. And from the personal perspective, first up, want Gala to beat Ayr. I think. I'm not decrying Ayr in any way at all, but I'm absolutely confident of the guys that are going to go on the pitch, and I think I'm going to say will. It should be can, but I'm going to say we will beat Ayr, and if that helps Kelso to be promoted, then that would be a wonderful outcome from my point of view. I don't think Kelso will need that help. I think Kelso will do it themselves. They are a super club, really well organised by a great bunch of guys, and I wish them nothing but well.
Yeah, you'd lose a local derby though next year, wouldn't you?
We would. We stand to lose at that, and we're going to gain 2 from Glasgow potentially, and possibly another one that's going to be a distance. So
because GHA are coming down, and possibly Falkirk or Newton Stuart coming up. Newton Stuart involves a bit more travel.
It does,
which always comes into the equation.
There's an argument for saying Newton Stuart's a border club, and it's got a lot of the same ethos. I remember them when I was a lad and I was working in Dumfries, that it was a super rugby club, great rivals to Dumfries. So if they come up, good luck to them. However, the journey at Falkirk would be perhaps slightly preferable.
And I know myself, Falkirk is a wonderful club. I used to cover them in National One, and sunny side round there, lovely ground, lovely people. So, but also obviously at Newton Stuart as well. We've covered them as well, and whoever comes up, we wish them the very best of luck. What about the Cup this year? Because you're away at Dundee. That's definitely a winnable game, and then all of a sudden you're in the higher reaches.
Well, though we lost to Hawks.
Oh, you're out.
Unfortunately.
See, that's good it's not a live interview. Otherwise, that would have gone out. I had you down as playing Dundee.
No, I wish we were, because you know what, we were a pass away from it. Was, I don't know if you were at that one.
Oh yeah, I was actually at the game. Yeah, it was 24-20.
We were as good as through, but it didn't quite work out. It was a good performance, Stuart, that showed that the guys can certainly live with a mid-table Prem team. So
okay, right. Well, we'll switch then to just a finally, really. So there'll be an edit coming along here. I can always put cutaways of Gala playing and stuff like that. So developing players is something which I know is at the heart of any club, and Gala no exception. And you've now got the Wanderers, you've got the A team. Everything's under one banner.
Yes.
How are you finding this? Because that happened about 2 or 3 years ago, didn't it?
I think anything like that, Stuart, takes time to bed in, and there are traditions of the various factions and say Hawick and Gala working separately in the past, and that's always been something that we've tried to get round, but it's not easy. It's not easy to do that. However, it's coming together. We've got a fantastic one club atmosphere just now. Guys are pulling together. There are always views and opinions that people have to express. That's fine. The door will always be open to that. But we are strongly working as one club. We're working that way with the ambition of becoming one of the top amateur teams in the country. If we weren't ambitious for that, we would be wasting our time in terms of the hard work that people put in. We have 12 players coming up from the Wanderers to the senior club over the summer period, and we're working together with Mark McCreef and his team at the Wanderers to make that as smooth a process as we possibly can for them. And there are other lads coming up through the Red Triangle and even from the academy who are giving us lots of optimism for the future, and it is really important that we make them feel actively part of the club, that staying at Gala and being involved and ambitious about Gala is an ambition that they will have, and that they are wee boys who want to pull on the maroon jersey and run out into Netherdale whilst other wee boys cheer them on. That's the stuff of the dreams that we want to create for the young boys coming up, and we will give it our absolute best.
And of course there's the Sevens as well, Kings of the Sevens, which resumes shortly at the Melrose Sevens. Gala right up there.
Well, we are, and I think that there's room for optimism. We'll have to win ball, but the way that the boys are running in tries at the moment, there's certainly room for optimism in the Sevens. I'm looking forward to the Sevens season. It's a huge part of the Borders. I'd love to see bigger crowds. I think we all would attending the Sevens, but from our perspective, I think there's every reason to be optimistic. Never cocky. You have to go into these things thinking you can win. I think you have to go in thinking you will win, and we will be giving it our best shot. Confident, Stuart, not cocky, but definitely confident.
Fantastic. Well, we certainly feel that Gala's in very good hands with you as Director of Rugby. We certainly wish you the very best of luck, and the club, of course, and we'll no doubt bump into you later on this season.
I'm sure. Thank you very much.
Well, that's your lot for today. Don't forget Gala versus Biggar tonight at Netherdale. Kick-off 7:30, and the Border League final on Monday night at 7:30, also at Netherdale, between Selkirk and Melrose. We'll be there for the big build-up on Monday, live on Borders Rugby Radio at 7 o'clock. Thanks for listening tonight, and from Dale and I, bye for now.